when do most listings come on the market? You know, in a normal market, it would be the second quarter of each year. Think of that as the spring real estate market. It's highlighted here, April, May, and June of every year. The reality is the market right now is anything but normal. I'm going to make the case over the next few minutes that we'll potentially see more listings this winter than we will at any other time of the year. The last 2 or so years have affected seasonality of the real estate market and kind of thrown it out the window. Why do people move? Home sellers have historically moved when something in their lives changed. A new baby, marriage, retirement, a divorce, a new job. This comes from Jessica Laus, the Vice President of Demographics at the National Association of Realtors. Life change real estate. She goes on to say the pandemic has impacted everyone, and for many this became an impetus to sell and make a housing trade. So no doubt that seasonality, all of those things that used to drive our business still do in some respect, but the pandemic caused a lot of people to say, we need something different in a home. And we're seeing the results of that right now. It goes on to say the pandemic likely spurred occupants to shorten their home stay as tenure in the home decreased from 10 years to 8 years. This is important here. This is the largest single year change in home tenure or length of ownership since the NAR, National Association of Realtors, began collecting the data. After 2008 and the housing crisis, tenure in homes began to rise. Here's what that looks like graphically. Going all the way back to 1985, you see the average of about 6 years of someone staying in their home, go through the housing crisis, and then people start staying in the homes longer. 7, 8, 9, up to 10 years. What caused the increase in time? A lot of people didn't have the equity to make a move. Maybe they were underwater for a while in the home that they own. Maybe they just said, you know, we're not going to do anything right now. We're going to try and pay this house off and stay here because we saw what happened to people during the housing crisis. Now, coming out of the pandemic, we're seeing that dip down. Now, I'm certainly not saying that 1 year would make a trend in any stretch of the imagination, but I think we can say that it represents pent-up seller demand in all those years that folks have stayed in their homes. We can say the meaning of home has dramatically changed. We can say there's more equity in homes today than there has been ever before. All of this is leading many people to think, is now the time to make a move? I do believe we'll start to see that in the winter after we break free of the holidays. Let's look at what George Rattal said at Realtor.com. The pandemic has delayed plans for many Americans and homeowners looking to move onto the next stage of life. And that's no exception. Recent survey data suggests many prospective sellers are actively preparing to enter the market this winter. So going back, a lot of reasons we just talked about, people are thinking about moving. This study is saying that we're seeing a lot of those people preparing to enter the market this winter. In that study, 65% said they have just listed or plan to this winter. 93% say they've already taken steps towards this, including working with a realtor, getting their house prepped, and 36% have researched the value of their homes and others in the neighborhood, as well as starting to make repairs and doing what they need to do to sell the home. Being prepared and educated is key. And finally, taking action. If you're thinking of listing your home in the next few months, here's my challenge to you. Over the next few weeks, how are you going to prepare? Taking action is what we need to be doing right now. Now, no matter how busy you are this holiday season, getting your checklist in order and strategic planning on paper will be critical. My clients are actively working on their listing challenge guides, so we are prepared after the holidays and they can enjoy the holiday season, but hit the ground running. Now, let's just talk a minute about interest rates, the hottest topic right now. What's going on with interest rates? We dodged a bullet. Right now, the interest rates were not raised, but I do think we know that's coming. The overall is that they are going to rise. I'll talk about that, but this is what it looks right now at the 30-year fixed rate. You look at January 2020, prior to the pandemic, it was knocking on the door of 4%. Currently, the average 30-year fixed is around 3.1. Many are calling for them to rise and go up in the next year. I'll show you what forecasters are saying, but if you were to ask me what's going to happen with interest rates, I think we're going to go back to where we were. Here's a historical perspective on interest rates. You know, looking at 2016, 17, 18, and 19. 4 really, I'm going to call them normal years. We balance somewhere between 3.5% and 5%. I think we're just heading back there into a much more normal interest rate environment. We've seen phenomenal rates over the last year or so. Historically low rates on a 30-year fix, and I think we're going to head back into a time we were prior to the pandemic.
So what's the impact of rising rates on home prices and home sales? If rates are going to rise, that's going to mean we're not going to sell as many homes, right? That's going to impact the market. Well, my research team went back and looked at the impact on historical rising interest rate environments and home prices and home sales. This should bring some perspective. First, home prices are slightly impacted by rising mortgage rates. This is a look going all the way back to 2000 at what you see in the line graph. There is the interest rate, and what you see in the bar graph is appreciation or depreciation during the housing crisis. The quick thing I want to point out is in each rising interest rate environment, there is no depreciation in house value except during that housing crisis. When you start to look at rising interest rate environments, the first one around 2005, less appreciation in 2006. You look at 2012, 13, and 14, rising interest rate environment, less appreciation. In the last year, the next one in 16, 17, and 18, we go up and come back down a little bit, so a slight impact in price appreciation. As we look, it is resistant to rising mortgage rates, and here's why. Mark Fleming, I think, sums it up best. Home price appreciation is resistant to rising mortgage rates, primarily because most sellers would rather withdraw from the market than sell at lower prices, a phenomenon we refer to as downside sticky. So some sellers are going to say, okay, if I can't get as much money for my home, or if my home is not appreciating as fast, we'll just take it off the market. That's what Mark's saying here. Second question I hear is home sales. Are they impacted by rising interest rates? Well, if you go all the way back to 1999, which is what you see in this graphic, where we have interest rates in the line graph and home sales in the bar graph, we can see home sales aren't impacted by rising mortgage rates. Now, I won't walk you through each scenario. You can see on here on the slide and here on the screen, each one of the red bars being rising interest rate environments. And they're not corresponding with lower home sales. When you go back and look historically, it just doesn't prove the amount of home sales declining due to rising interest rates. Now, millennials are going to age into their prime home buying years in large numbers. So the context remains good for the housing market. I think overall, as we look at that, we can expect a rising interest rate environment going into the next year. I don't see that affecting the housing market dramatically. For those of you thinking you might do something in a year or two, I want to educate you about this market. First graphic, mortgage rate projections. This is an outlook from the 4 leading providers we follow, Fannie, Freddie, MBA, and NAR. What are they saying? Sometime between the middle of the end of next year, forecasting between 3.5% and 4% for the average 30-year fixed. So it's going to cost more. I think you should expect to see interest rates to rise. I'm not here today with a crystal ball to say this is what interest rates are going to be and by any stretch of the imagination, but I am here to say I think we can expect a rising interest rate environment. I'm just educating people about that going into next year so we can plan and strategize. Next is the home price forecast for 2022. A lot of people are saying, what's going to happen to housing next year? I'm concerned that, here we go again, looking at another crash. Well, forecasters are calling for a 5.1 on average % appreciation in the housing market next year. and you see anywhere from 7.5% to almost 3% appreciation on the low side. I can say for Arundel County, I just did the numbers and the averages. For last year, it came in at about 10% on average for the whole county as far as appreciation. So you can see 5% appreciation would be about half of that, but it's still appreciation. It is not depreciation. Now, this is a direct nod to seeing more inventory come into the market. The price will always be dictated by supply and demand in many markets, and most markets that I work in have always had very low inventory. We just might get 6 offers per property if the interest rates go slightly up versus double-digit offers. Trust me, normalizing the housing market may be a good thing. The next question, is there going to be a crash? Some are concerned about what they've seen and forbearance being over and all the things that we know have happened. The bottom line here is that housing sales are forecasted to increase this year and perform very well again in 2022. I want to remind you, last year in 2020, we sold 6.5 million homes in this country. We're forecasted to sell more than that this year and more than that next year. This slide here always does a great job to show where we are in the real estate market based on months of inventory in the extreme seller's market that we're in. Thinking about selling your home, there's literally never been a better time. And while sometimes that feels like a broken record, this graphic just underscores it, going all the way back to 1999. It's been a great seller's market for those that have decided to sell. Are you a potential seller and then buyer saying, I don't know if I want to buy at the top of the market? If we sell, we're going to have to pay more for another home. You know, the best time to buy a home is this year. The next best time to buy is right now. There was a home price expectation survey done based on this year all the way through 2026. Buying a home, an average price home, and what appreciation would be at stake or what you would lose if you didn't buy sooner than later. And that number is 111,000. Just over 111,000 in real estate appreciation in the next 5 years. It's a good time to go out and buy a home. I would love to share with you your property specific value and projections as we're looking at national numbers here today. I do have an Arundel County market update that I'll also be posting. So go to my YouTube channel to get these regular updates. I have found my regions tend to follow these averages we have reviewed here. My updated winter 2022 buyer and seller guides are updated and available now. This 24-page guide is going to equip you with everything you need to know to make powerful and confident decisions in the real estate market for you and your family. Is it the right time for us to buy? Is it the right time for us to sell and move on? Contact me through my profile or email me at jeanniehalloran@gmail.com and let me know whether or not you need buyer or the seller guide. I'll be happy to send it to you. Thank you for your time today. I'm Jeannie Halloran at eXp in Annapolis, Maryland.